They thought no one could ever escape, but they were wrong. In the dark heart of Louisiana, behind steel doors and razor wire, men disappeared. Some crawled through holes no bigger than a fist. Some ran into the swamps and were never seen again. And some almost made it. This is a story of 5 prison escapes that shocked Louisiana. Real stories, real danger, and the truth that will keep you watching till the very end. Wait, before we start, tap that subscribe button right now. Turn on the bell, because the story you're about to hear isn't a movie. It happened, for real, and it's only the first of 5. Let's go. They said the new jail was escape-proof. They said the security systems were modern. They said no one could ever get out. But in the early hours of May 16th, 2025, 10 men proved them wrong. The Orleans Parish Detention Center sits right in the heart of New Orleans. It's surrounded by concrete, metal, and high fences wrapped in razor wire. Inside, hundreds of inmates live in pods, small blocks with cells, toilets, and narrow hallways. Every movement is supposed to be watched by cameras and guards. Every door is locked. Every sound echoes. But that night, something changed. Something went quiet. It started around midnight. In one cell, a group of inmates had been planning. They had studied every inch of the room, every screw, every weak spot, and they found one, behind a metal toilet. They waited for the right moment. The guard on duty stepped away, maybe to eat, maybe to rest. No one knows for sure. And in that small window of silence, the men went to work. They unbolted the toilet sink unit from the wall. It wasn't easy. It took time, strength, and luck. But once it was loose, they pulled it forward and stared at the wall behind it. That's when they saw it, a hollow space, just big enough to crawl through. They pushed away broken pieces of plaster and insulation. One by one, they squeezed through the opening and entered the narrow gap behind the cells. It was dark. It smelled of rust and water. A maze of pipes surrounded them. They followed the sound of dripping water until they reached another barrier. Steel bars meant to block the maintenance tunnel. But someone had already cut them. Maybe days before. Maybe weeks. No one knows. When the first man slipped through, he realized he was inside the walls of the jail, literally between the building's layers. A hidden passage that most guards didn't even know existed. They crawled through the space, scraping their arms on concrete. Their hearts pounded. Some wanted to turn back, but others pushed forward. Finally, they reached the outer maintenance door. It was locked, but like the others, it wasn't as strong as it looked. A hard kick, a crack, and the door swung open. For the first time, they could feel the cold air of the outside world. They looked at each other. No turning back now. They ran toward the jail's loading dock. A high fence stood in front of them, crowned with razor wire. They climbed anyway, cuts open on their hands and arms. But adrenaline kept them going. One by one, they dropped down on the other side. Freedom was right there. By 1 a.m., 10 inmates had escaped from one of Louisiana's most guarded jails. And no one inside even noticed. Hours passed. The night shift ended. The morning shift began. And still, no one realized the cells were empty. No alarms. No alerts. Nothing. It wasn't until 8:30 a.m. that someone finally noticed. A routine head count. 10 missing. 10. Panic exploded through the building. Officers ran through pods shouting names. Sirens wailed. Every hallway filled with shouting. But it was too late. The men were gone. The escape hit the news before noon. Reporters called it one of the worst security failures in the jail's history. 10 inmates, all out at once, using nothing but tools found inside their own cell. The sheriff's office launched a manhunt with city police, state troopers, and U.S. Marshals. Roadblocks appeared across New Orleans. Helicopters hovered over the neighborhoods near the jail. People living close to the area were told to stay inside. By that evening, 3 men had already been caught. They were found only a few blocks away, tired, dirty, and barefoot. Another was caught hiding in a parking garage. But the rest had vanished. Detectives started digging into how this could happen. How did no one hear them? How did no alarms go off? Why did the guard leave the pod? Then investigators found something strange inside the escape cell. graffiti, scrawled in black marker near the broken wall. To easy, one line said, spelled T.O. Another said, "We innocent." And next to that, a message mocking the sheriff's office. It was like a signature left behind by men who knew exactly what they had done. Over the next few days, more fugitives were caught. Some turned themselves in. Some were tracked down through friends and family. By the end of May, 8 of the 10 were back behind bars. But 2 were still free. One of them, a man named Antoine Massey, managed to stay hidden for weeks. Police later said he used old contacts and back roads to avoid being found. He was finally captured in late June, tired and silent. He refused to talk about the escape. The last man, Derek Groves, became the face of the story. Every news channel showed his picture. Every police bulletin had his name. And yet, he stayed one step ahead. Weeks turned into months. People started to wonder if he'd left the state, maybe even crossed into another country. But the truth was closer than anyone thought. On October 8, 2025, almost 5 months after the escape, officers found him in a small house on the outskirts of New Orleans. No one knows who tipped them off. When they arrived, Groves tried to run again. But this time, there was nowhere to go. He was caught without a fight. When the final escapee was returned, the city breathed again. But the damage was done. The Orleans Parish Justice Center, the jail that was supposed to be modern and secure, was now a national headline for all the wrong reasons. An internal investigation uncovered shocking details. The escape hole had existed for weeks before May 16th. Maintenance crews had patched and repatched walls without checking the structure properly. The guard who left his post had been covering multiple pods alone because of short staffing, and one maintenance worker was accused of helping the inmates by giving them tools. The sheriff at the time called it a perfect storm of failure, and it was weak walls, missing guards, ignored warnings. Even more haunting, several inmates later said they'd been planning for months, testing the walls, watching the shifts, waiting for the night when the cameras glitched, when the timing was right. When investigators walked back to the escape route, they were stunned. The hole was barely wide enough for an adult to fit through. The path through the wall was long, narrow, and filled with sharp edges. It looked impossible. But somehow, 10 men made it. The Orleans jailbreak became one of the largest in Louisiana's recent history, a symbol of how quickly control can crumble when small mistakes stack up. Some say the story ends there, but others whisper that there were plans for more, that the hole behind the toilet wasn't the only one, that others had been testing the same wall in different pods. To this day, rumors say another group almost tried the same route a week later, but backed out after seeing the news. If they hadn't, who knows how many more could have escaped. The Orleans Parish Justice Center promised to rebuild, to fix every flaw, to double the guards and seal every wall. But in a place where time moves slow and secrets stay hidden, trust doesn't return overnight. One mistake, 10 inmates, and a hole behind a toilet that changed everything. The walls of Orleans may be repaired now, but the question still lingers. If 10 men could find a way out once, could it happen again? The story isn't over. In fact, it's just beginning, because while New Orleans was still trying to seal its broken walls, another Louisiana jail was about to face its own nightmare. And this one didn't happen once. It happened again and again. Welcome to Tangipahoa Parish, a quiet place halfway between New Orleans and Baton Rouge. Peaceful, green, calm on the outside. But behind the walls of its small parish jail, something was going very wrong. This jail had seen escapes before. Tiny cracks in fences, loose wires, weak patrols. But no one expected history to repeat itself so soon. It began in the spring of 2024. 2 inmates slipped out during recreation time. They crawled under a damaged section of the outer fence. It was quick, simple, silent. By the time guards noticed, they were already gone. The sheriff promised it would never happen again. New razor wire was added. Spotlights were fixed. The yard was reinforced. But the truth is, nothing really changed. A year later, almost to the day, it happened again. May 2025. Different Inmates. Same jail. Same weak spot. One of them was a young man named Trayvon Johnson. Locals called him fast. Smart. Quiet. He'd escaped from the same place before, and somehow he found the same path again. That night it was humid. The air was thick with the smell of rain. Inmates were out in the recreation yard, walking in slow circles. A guard stood on the watchtower, distracted by his radio. Down below, a few men gathered near the back corner of the fence. They had a plan. The jail's outer wall was tall, lined with coiled razor wire. But the bottom edge, where the ground met the metal, had rusted over time. A small space had opened, just a few inches. Enough to dig. Using nothing but a broken piece of plastic pipe, they scraped the dirt loose. It took only a few minutes. They pressed the wire up and crawled under, one by one. The last man used his shirt to hold the fence in place, so it wouldn't rattle. Then he was gone too. 6 inmates escaped that night. 6. By the time officers realized what had happened, the yard was empty. Only footprints and torn cloth were left behind. Sirens screamed through the parish. Deputies raced down rural roads with flashing lights. Dogs were brought into track, sent through the woods. Helicopters circled the nearby fields, their spotlights sweeping over ponds and sugarcane patches. Within hours, 2 were caught, hiding near a drainage ditch. Another was found walking barefoot near a gas station. But 3 had vanished into the swamp. People in nearby homes locked their doors. Farmers stopped working their fields. News alerts told residents to stay inside until further notice. The sheriff called a press conference the next morning. He looked tired, embarrassed. He admitted what everyone already suspected. The jail's fences were falling apart. He promised repairs. He promised accountability. But this was Tangipahoa Parish. Small budgets, old systems, and a pattern that refused to die. Over the next few days, most of the fugitives were captured. 2 men were found sleeping in an abandoned shed. Another surrendered after 3 days hiding in the swamp. He told reporters, "The mosquitoes almost got me before the cops did." But 1 inmate stayed free longer. No one knew where he'd gone. Some said he made it all the way to Texas. Others claimed he was still in the parish, hiding in plain sight. Weeks passed. Rumors spread. And then, without warning, deputies caught him during a traffic stop, sitting quietly in the passenger seat of a stolen car. The escape was officially over. But the questions were not. How could the same jail have the same kind of breakout 2 years in a row? Why did the same man manage to escape twice? And why weren't the warnings taken seriously after the first time? The sheriff's answer was simple. He blamed money. He blamed staffing. He blamed old infrastructure. But people didn't buy it. Not after seeing news helicopters circling the same prison yard. Twice. An internal review later showed that maintenance reports had been filed months before the 2025 escape. Guards had reported a weak fence post, broken security lights, and a missing motion sensor. None of it was fixed, and that was all the opportunity the inmates needed. The truth hurt. The Tangipahoa Parish Jail wasn't built for this kind of pressure. It was overcrowded, understaffed, and falling apart. For the people living nearby, every siren after dark now carried the same question. Did someone else get out? Months later, after all the escapees were back behind bars, the sheriff tried to rebuild trust. He ordered new cameras. He raised a fence. He added more lights. He even created a new escape response team. But the memory of those nights, the lights flashing, the dogs barking, the sound of helicopters over the fields, never faded. Residents still talk about it. The night when 6 men crawled under a fence and disappeared into Louisiana swamp. The night when Tangipahoa's quiet town turned into a scene from a movie. And the strangest part? Those 2 escapes weren't the only ones. Reports later revealed smaller incidents that never made the news. Short-term inmates slipping out of transport vans. Workers sneaking out through maintenance areas. The pattern stretched back years. Tangipahoa Parish became a symbol of what can happen when small cracks get ignored. Each escape started with something tiny. A rusty wire, a broken light, a guard distracted for 10 seconds. And those 10 seconds changed everything. Even now, after new systems and repairs, people still wonder if it could happen again, because the truth about prisons is simple. No wall lasts forever. No fence is truly escape-proof. And if someone wants freedom badly enough, they'll always find a way. The Tangipahoa escapes were embarrassing. They were dangerous. But most of all, they were a warning that Louisiana's prison system had deeper problems. And as we move into the next story, you'll see just how deep those problems go. Because while Tangipahoa was patching its fences, another prison, larger, stricter, and supposedly safer, would face a different kind of escape, one that happened fast. Almost too fast to believe. And if you thought the first two breakouts were bold, wait until you hear what happened next. How does someone vanish from one of Louisiana's most secure prisons without cutting a fence, without breaking a lock, without anyone noticing for hours? That's exactly what happened inside the Elayn Correctional Center. And when investigators found out how, they couldn't believe it. Elayn isn't an ordinary jail. It's huge, a maze of buildings sitting in St. Gabriel near Baton Rouge. It holds more than 2,000 men, many serving decades. It's supposed to be escape-proof. But in June 2024, one inmate proved otherwise. His name was Darian Lewis, 34 years old, doing time for armed robbery. Not a violent troublemaker, just quiet, smart, and always watching. Guards called him steady. He never caused fights. He worked hard in the prison metal shop, fixing doors and welding pipes. And that's where it began, in the same place meant to keep things strong. One day, Darian noticed something small. The outer maintenance gate, an old one, tucked behind the workshop, didn't close right. The hinge sat loose against the frame, and the latch didn't fit tight. Rainwater had rusted the bolts. To anyone else, it looked like nothing. To him, it looked like a map out. For weeks, he studied everything. When guards switched posts, when trucks entered for deliveries, which cameras moved and which stayed frozen. He built the pattern in his head. Every sound, every blind spot. He never told anyone. He knew the fewer people who knew, the longer the secret stayed alive. Then came June 28th, 2024, a Friday night. Hot. Still, storms brewing in the distance. By evening, the thunder rolled across St. Gabriel. Lightning flashed over the prison walls. Rain poured so heavy that cameras blurred with static. And that was all the cover he needed. Inside the metal shop, Darian pretended to work late. He'd slipped a small wrench and a broken screwdriver into his pocket. Tools no one would miss. When the guards moved inside to avoid the rain, he went to the gate. 2 quick turns of the wrench, and the lower hinge came loose. He wedged the screwdriver into the frame and pushed. The metal groaned. Then silence. The gap was just wide enough. He crawled through, tearing his shirt on the wire mesh. One cut ran down his arm, but he didn't stop. He hit the mud outside and ran. No alarms, no lights, just rain and darkness. He sprinted past the back fence, down toward the levee that separates the prison grounds from the Mississippi River. Every step left deep tracks in the soaked earth. Behind him, the storm swallowed the sound of his breathing. For a while, it seemed like he'd made it. Inside the control room, officers were focused on lightning strikes, not inmates. But just after 9 p.m., a guard noticed something strange on one of the monitors. A camera caught a faint shadow near the maintenance yard, then static. He thought it was nothing, until another guard checked the gate. It was open, and the inmate count came up short. The siren started. Within minutes, the whole facility locked down. Units from surrounding parishes joined the chase. 9 teams moved along the riverbank, their handlers shouting through the storm. Drones were launched, but rain blinded their cameras. Darian kept moving. He followed the river south, using the flashes of lightning to see his path. He avoided roads, crawled through ditches hid in tall reeds. His plan was simple. Reach the levee, follow it until sunrise, then find a boat or a ride. But the Mississippi had other ideas. The farther he went, the deeper the water got. Flooded canals cut across the levee. The ground sank under his feet. Each step pulled him down like quicksand. Still, he pressed on. Hours passed. The rain eased. But now he could hear the dogs, faint at first, then closer. Their barks echoed across the water. He found an old drainage pipe, wide enough to crawl inside. He hid there, chest deep in cold water, breathing slow, waiting. The sound of boots and radios drifted by. Then silence again. He thought he'd lost them. He was wrong. By dawn, a deputy spotted fresh tracks near the levee. They followed them for half a mile and found something floating. A torn prison shirt. A few yards away, prints led toward a shallow canal. That's where they found him. Lie in the mud, soaked, shivering, barely conscious. He'd tried to swim across and got caught in the current. He didn't fight. He just whispered, "I almost made it." By 6 a.m., Darian Lewis was back in custody. He'd been free for less than 9 hours. The escape sent shockwaves through Louisiana's correctional system. How did a man with basic tools and no outside help breach one of the state's most secure prisons? Reporters wanted answers. Officials gave excuses. At first, the Department of Corrections blamed the storm, said lightning knocked out cameras. But later, an internal review revealed more. The maintenance gate Darian used had been flagged for repairs months earlier. 2 separate work orders noted loose hinges and improper alignment. No one ever fixed it. That mistake cost the state millions in emergency response and national embarrassment. The warden called it a perfect storm, a mix of weather, timing, and human error. But for investigators, it was something simpler. Neglect. Guards had grown comfortable. Inspections had grown routine. And one man, patient enough to notice, took advantage. In the weeks that followed, Elayn Hunt went under a full security overhaul. Cameras were replaced. Fences reinforced. Even the metal shop was moved farther from the outer wall. But the question remained. If this could happen here, how safe were the other prisons? Inside, inmates whispered about Darian like a legend. Some said he reached the river and came back on purpose. Others believed he'd planned a second escape that never happened. No one really knew. The only thing clear was this. Elayn Hunt would never be the same. Months later, when another storm rolled through St. Gabriel, guards still double-checked every latch, every bolt, every hinge, because all it took was one gap in the metal, and one man who wanted out bad enough. For the system, it was a wake-up call. For the inmates, it was proof that even escape-proof isn't perfect. But the story doesn't end there. Because while Hunt was tightening its walls, another Louisiana prison was facing something darker, a place older, stricter, and far more dangerous. And when that one broke, it wasn't just a single man who slipped out. It was an entire operation. Get ready, because the next story takes us to Angola, the Louisiana State Penitentiary, where history, heat, and desperation collide. They call it Angola, a name that still makes people in Louisiana pause. The Louisiana State Penitentiary, once a plantation, now the largest maximum security prison in the United States. A place where men worked the same fields that once held slaves. A place that was never meant to be escaped from. And yet, some tried. A few even came close. This story isn't about one man's mistake. It's about what happens when the most guarded prison in America discovers that even the strongest chains can bend. Let's go back. January 2023. The day started quiet. Cold air hung over the Mississippi River. Inside Angola, over 5,000 inmates were waking up for another day of field labor and routine counts. In one of the older units, Camp C, a man named Michael Thomas was sweeping near the back gate. He wasn't a lifer, but he was close. 42 years old, serving time for multiple armed robberies. He'd been in Angola long enough to know every pattern, every sound, every guard habit. And one thing always bothered him. The same gate never fully locked. The outer perimeter of Angola is layered. Inside fences, then another fence, then open land, the fields, stretching for miles, ending at the river. The prison itself sits in a remote bend, surrounded by swamp, snakes, and water on 3 sides. It's isolation by design. Escape doesn't just mean getting past walls. It means surviving what's beyond them. But Thomas had been watching for months. And when a construction team came to repair drainage pipes near the outer fence, he saw his moment. They'd left behind something small, a short metal rod, maybe 8 inches long, enough to loosen bolts, enough to pry a lock. He took it, hid it in the dirt under the barracks, and waited. Weeks passed. Guards changed shifts. Rain softened the ground near the fence. And on one foggy morning, just before sunrise, Thomas made his move. He worked fast, bending the wire at the base of the outer fence. The fog hid him from the towers. By the time the next guard rotation came, he was already crawling through the gap. No one noticed until the next count. And by then he was gone. He didn't run far, not yet. He stayed low, hiding in the woods near the fields. From there, he could see Angola's distant lights glowing through the mist. He waited for daylight, knowing the swamp ahead would be impossible in the dark. But Angola isn't the kind of place that forgives silence. When the missing inmate report came in, chaos followed. Sirens blared. Search teams fanned out across the grounds. Horse patrols scoured the fields. Helicopters lifted off within minutes. The warden, Tim Hooper, called an all-hands situation. Within 2 hours, Angola was locked down tighter than it had been in years. At first, they thought Thomas had drowned. The Mississippi was high, and escapees had died that way before. But the dogs picked up a scent leading away from the river, through dense woods and farmland. He was alive, and still moving. By afternoon, the manhunt stretched into West Louisiana Parish. Deputies searched barns and hunting camps. Locals were warned to lock their doors. Schools were briefly put on alert. Then came the call. A farmer spotted someone running across his property. Soaked and muddy, deputies surrounded the area. After nearly 24 hours on the run, they found Thomas hiding beneath a fallen log near a creek bed. Exhausted, shaking, but still alive. When they brought him back, reporters gathered outside the gate. One shouted, "How'd you do it?" Thomas didn't answer. He just looked up at the towers and said quietly, "It wasn't the walls. It was the people." That single line hit everyone hard, because after the investigation, it turned out he was right. The fence section he used to escape hadn't been properly repaired after storm 2 months earlier. 2 work orders were filed. Neither was completed, and one of the motion sensors had been offline for maintenance for 3 days. The result? A hole in the system. A hole big enough for one man to crawl through. The Department of Corrections launched an immediate review. Dozens of security staff were questioned. New floodlights were installed. Every perimeter alarm was tested, retested, and replaced. But for Angola, this wasn't the first escape, and it wasn't the worst. Back in 2000, another inmate named Mark Jordan made headlines when he disappeared during work duty near the prison printing shop. He used a makeshift ladder, scaled 2 fences, and vanished into the fields before being caught the next day. In 2013, a guard was arrested for helping smuggle contraband, including maps and tools, to inmates planning another attempt. Each time, the pattern was the same. A small crack, a moment of weakness, and a man desperate enough to risk everything. That's what Angola teaches you. No one escapes alone. There's always a system failure behind it. After Thomas's capture, the warden released a statement calling it a hard-learned lesson. But inside those walls, the story spread like wildfire. Inmates whispered that he almost made it, that he reached the levee before the fog lifted, that if he'd started 1 hour earlier, he'd be gone forever. No one really knows. The only thing clear is that he made the state rethink everything. New surveillance towers were built, thermal imaging systems installed. Guards were retrained on every shift rotation. And still, rumors say at night you can see faint marks on the outer fence, scars from where the metal bent that morning. The Angola escape reminded everyone that even the most fortified prison in America depends on one fragile thing: attention. Lose it for a minute, and the system cracks. For Louisiana, it was another sign of how the state's prisons were struggling. Overcrowded, understaffed, aging faster than they could be repaired. And while the story of Michael Thomas faded from headlines, it became part of a bigger conversation, one about the future of Louisiana's correctional system itself. Because every escape, from New Orleans to Tangipahoa to St. Gabriel to Angola, told the same story. Walls crumble when no one's watching. And every time one man slips through, the whole system shakes. But this series doesn't end here, because Louisiana's history has one more chapter. A story that doesn't take place in a prison yard. It takes place in the minds of those who survived it. The guards, the families, the people who still live near those walls and listen for sirens at night. Stay with me, because the final story isn't about how they escaped. It's about why it keeps happening. The final story begins here. The last chapter in our journey through Louisiana's most unbelievable prison escapes. The kind of escape that leaves everyone asking, how did he do it? He wasn't supposed to leave. No walls could have let him pass. No fences should have bent. Cameras covered every inch. And yet, Antoine Massey slipped through, vanished from one of the state's most secure detention centers. And in that moment, the quiet town of Monroe became part of a story no one would forget. It was August 2019 at the Morehouse Parish Detention Center, just outside Monroe, Louisiana. On the surface, the facility was calm. Routine, patrols, counts, everything looked ordinary. Inside, Antoine Massey waited. He had been watching for weeks, studying patterns, watching for gaps, learning exactly when and where he could make his move. The exercise yard seemed harmless. Inmates walked slowly. Guards moved through their patrols. And yet, one man saw something no one else did. A small flaw. A loose section of chain-link fence at the back of the yard. It had gone unnoticed, worn down by time and weather. To everyone else, it was invisible. To Massey, it was an opportunity. When the yard doors opened that morning, he moved carefully. He stayed low, never drawing attention. Step by step, inch by inch, he approached the weak spot. He slipped under the fence quietly, with a precision that surprised even him. Outside, an accomplice waited with a car. A getaway plan was ready. In moments, Massey was gone from the detention center. No alarm sounded. No immediate pursuit. Just silence, broken only by the faint sound of tires on the distant road. By the time the guards realized what had happened, he was already on his way. State police were alerted. Roadblocks went up. Search teams combed the area. But Massey had crossed into Texas before anyone could catch him. The escape was short-lived. Authorities tracked him down the same day. He was apprehended quietly, without incident. Back behind bars, the questions remained. How had it happened? And why hadn't the loose fence been repaired? Later investigations revealed what many suspected. The fence had been reported as damaged weeks prior. Maintenance requests had gone unanswered. A single overlooked flaw had allowed one determined man to slip free. The escape sent shockwaves through the Louisiana prison system. It highlighted the same themes seen in every story we've told. Even the most secure facility can fail when vigilance falters. Even a single mistake can change everything. For residents near Monroe, the day became a cautionary tale. For inmates, Massey's escape became part of his legend. Proof that determination, observation, and patience could make the impossible happen. This final story reminds us of one harsh truth. No matter how high the walls, how tight the fences, or how sharp the eyes of the guards, there will always be someone willing to test the limits. And every time, the system learns, sometimes the hard way. 5 stories, 5 escapes, 5 reminders that no wall is truly unbreakable. From the cold, dark cells of Orleans Parish, to the desperate flights at Tangipahoa, through the tense hours at Elayn hunt, the shocking chaos at Angola, and the final audacity at Morehouse Parish. Each story revealed the cracks, the mistakes, the moments when everything hung by a thread. And yet, for every escape we've seen, there are countless stories still untold. In Louisiana and beyond, prisons hold secrets. Secrets that some are willing to risk everything to uncover. What drives a person to challenge the walls? How far will someone go to taste freedom? And which prison will be next to test the limits of control? The answers are out there, and we're going to find them. So, if you want to see the next shocking escapes, the hidden stories behind prison walls, and the secrets that authorities wish would stay buried, make sure you subscribe. Hit that notification bell. Like, share and comment your thoughts, because the next story is coming, and it will take you deeper into the darkness than you've ever imagined. The walls are never as strong as they seem, and the next escape might change everything.